We're getting close to the passing of Bill 184, and we're joined right now by a paralegal out of St. Catharines, Lisa Ridsdill, who can shed some light on what that actually means for tenants. Lisa, there is a lot of speculation. I mean, this bill is basically, the title is it's protecting tenants, but you are of the opinion that it's doing the opposite. Can you explain why?
It is increasing some compensation to tenants in certain areas. However, it is excluding a lot of the tenants' rights. That's our concern. A lot of tenants, they go to court with maintenance issues, things like that. They can offset against the rent arrears. This new bill is going to change that. So they will not be able to offset against any arrears. They'll have to file their own application, which is very concerning for us.
How close is this bill to passing? Is it too late to stop it anyway?
We've done a lot of presentations with the oral hearings on Tuesday and Wednesday. A lot of legal clinics, a lot of tenant associations were in attendance to that and argued against certain stipulations that are coming into the bill. Our thing is wrong bill, wrong time.
When a government like the Conservative government here in Ontario has the ability with their majority to push legislation through, it can be quite daunting to try and be heard.
This bill may help streamline the eviction process for a lot of tenants. So a lot of tenants, due to COVID and limited income or resources, wage losses, things like that, which we have seen an increase in Niagara to 12.2% on unemployment rate, they can enter into a payment plan. But that's done without legal representation, without mediators, without the board. And we're afraid that a lot of tenants are going to enter into these tenancy agreements to save their tenancy so they don't have to move, because the cost of living for other rental units have increased and it's difficult for them to find housing that's affordable.
Right now, under COVID-19, there is a rental eviction moratorium, but when that comes to an end, what will that mean for many of our low-income tenants?
That means that they're going to be forced into unreasonable payment plans and either to keep their tenancy or be threatened to be evicted. The Landlord and Tenant Board, they usually come up with reasonable repayment plans for a lot of tenants in certain circumstances, according to their scenarios and income and stuff like that. So we're trying to get them not to enter into those, because if they do, that means that the landlord can immediately go to the board without a hearing, without notice to the tenant, and get an eviction order. So we are extremely cautioning tenants not to enter into unreasonable payment plans with landlords in order to try to secure their tenancy.
How do you get the word out to the tenants? Because I imagine a lot of tenants do not know exactly what their rights and options might be.
Niagara Community Legal Clinic and other organizations have come together to try to bring awareness to these tenants, especially with the new bill. If it does pass, it's going to put them in a lot of peculiar circumstances with their shelter. And my concern is a lot of the seniors. A lot of the seniors are good standing, long standing tenants, and their rent is very cheap. For them to move on CPP and old age limited income, it's very difficult for them. And that's where it's impacting a lot.
We also have a low rental availability crisis here in Niagara. There's just not enough low rental units for the people that need them.
That is correct. That's another thing in the bill is landlord's own use applications, renovation applications, purchaser applications, and a lot of them they're not legitimate. So I would suggest everybody to fight those and contact a legal clinic for legal advice.
There's a term that I'm barely familiar with. I've heard it a couple of times. I don't really know what it means. Renault Evictions is something that you've been fighting against as well. What do you mean by that?
That means a landlord can serve any tenant and give them 120-day notice saying they're doing major renovations to their unit and they have to vacate. Generally, you do in the law have a right to first entry. However, a lot of landlords don't want the tenant's right of entry because they're at the same rental amount prior to the renovations. So what a lot of landlords are doing is just evicting, taking their chances, and if the tenant goes after them after the fact, they can't get back into the unit, but they can get compensation, which again, in today's economy and affordable housing and housing crisis, that is impacting a lot of tenants. I had 12 units vacated and it wasn't legit. So it is happening.
Your role as a paralegal, how do you fight these?
We, at the legal clinic, I also represent, we also do tenant duty counsel. So any hearings that are coming up on the docket, we're advised of that. We contact the landlord and tenant board. Now, because of COVID, it's all online, telephone hearings. The only thing that's proceeding right now are urgent hearings. So
those must be difficult as well. A hearing on the telephone or even something like Zoom or Skype like we are doing today, that must be very difficult to be heard from the tenant's perspective.
It is, especially since there is already a power imbalance. A lot of landlords come with representation, lawyers. They're well advised of the law. They know their rights. They know what they can and cannot do. They sometimes choose not to follow those rights or the law. But tenants are disadvantaged because they don't have that access. We deal with low income, we deal with individuals with learning disabilities, with other disabilities, with seniors, individuals with language barriers, so including the international students. So there is a lot of barriers for tenants out there.
You work closely as well with the Niagara Poverty Reduction Network. How is that relationship working together with them?
Well, we work with Niagara Poverty Reduction Network, who Aidan Johnson is chair of. We also work with Affordable Housing Committee, and Ashley Chiarello is chair of that. Prior to COVID, we were going in a team effort with the libraries and doing presentations on tenant rights and focusing on the tenant rights so that they become more aware of their rights. And that is the problem, what you said. How do we get it out? Those rights to the tenants.
Can you help those people in Niagara Falls right now? A lot of people who are on low income are turning to motels for long-term rentals. Are you able to help them in those situations as well?
Motel rentals are a little bit more difficult. I've been dealing with the Niagara Falls motels for quite a few years now. It does not fall under the Residential Tenancies Act. Motels, they are exempt. However, if you can show that you are a permanent resident, you're not vacationing, you're not traveling, you're using it as a home just like everybody else, it does more likely fall under the RTA. And we have had cases where it has qualified or been under the jurisdiction of the landlord and tenant board.
You mentioned that you were doing these information sessions at libraries before COVID-19. How are you getting the message out and informing tenants of their rights under COVID-19?
We are directing them to more resources. Clio has awesome resources for tenant rights or any rights. If anybody's in any circumstance, the Clio is great for information. The Niagara Legal Clinic is also on their Twitter, and their Facebook has also posted information for tenants. Plus, we are not doing any presentations right now to apartment buildings, motels, or libraries. What we are doing is getting out as much legal pamphlets as possible to educate them. We are dealing with right now an air condition crisis where a lot of landlords are demanding removal of the air conditioners. And with this heat wave, I have grave concerns for the seniors that have health issues, and this is dire need for them.
Bill 184, let's wrap up. When is that scheduled for its next reading? How close is it to passing? And what are your efforts over the next little while?
Bill 184 in third reading is July 6th. So hopefully with all our voice at the oral hearings, they will amend to provide further protection for these tenants. As we explained to them, being compensated 1 month, 2 months is not comparable to dislocating these tenants and making them suffer. A lot of individuals already are paying 80-90% of their income on rent. So if we keep allowing these landlords to increase the rent and evict people just so they can increase, we are going to have a major impact in Niagara. And we are going to have major homelessness, which is a great concern, especially when we're dealing with seniors.
Lisa, thanks so much for your time, and keep up the fight helping these low-income individuals and their housing issues. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for your time.